Hi guys, this is Milena. Recently, somebody asked the following question. They had asked the universe for a sign about something, and they had two different options, but they felt like the universe had sent them both signs, and they weren't quite sure how to interpret it, what that means, and that's why I decided to create a video about how we can communicate better with the universe, or whatever we want to call it, or with our own guidance system in order to receive signs and get some answers to questions that we might have. Now, one of the first and most important thing is to establish a clear communication language, because very often the reason why we can't really interpret the signs very well is because we're not quite sure what it means. For example, we would see things like 1111 or 222 and things like that, and we're like, well, I see this very often, it kind of attracts my attention, but I'm not quite sure how to interpret it. And the other mistake that we make, if we even call it that, is that we ask others, well, what does this mean? How do you interpret it? And the thing is that we all have our own language, our own way of communicating with our guidance system, with our universe. So what one thing means to one person might mean something completely different to another. So asking for another person's interpretation might not necessarily be accurate in terms of the sign that you received. So establishing a clear communication language, what does that mean? When we have a question, that means that we set the parameters of how to receive the sign. For example, if feathers mean something to do with writing, then if your question is, should I write a book, and you find all of a sudden a beautiful feather somewhere, then that would be a yes. Usually the universe or our own guidance system uses symbols that we have particular understanding of, so that we can understand and interpret the signs a lot more clearly. But it's very, very helpful to set the parameters of the questions that you ask. For example, I was wondering if it's a good time for me to start writing a book. I had been thinking about that for a really, really long time. So I said, okay, if I receive a book as a gift within the next 2 weeks, then that would be an affirmative answer. That would mean a yes. Now, I thought that that was not very likely because not very many people have been gifting me books, had been gifting me books lately, and 2 weeks is not a very, very long period of time. It wasn't like I had a birthday or any type of occasion where people would be giving me gifts. So it was not very likely to happen. And that's how I knew that if it were to happen, then I would definitely have no doubt that the answer was actually yes. So I said that, and I actually kind of forgot about it. But a week later, I get a package from overseas, and that package had a ton of books. So they weren't for me, they were for my daughter. But then at the bottom of it, there was not one, there were 3 books that were for me. And that's when the universe says, yes, 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 more than one. A lot of people would say, oh, I had a dream about a snake or a serpent, and what does that mean? Does that mean something bad? Does that mean death? And sometimes it might just mean that you need to be careful and mindful of something, or tread gently, or walk on your tippy toes or eggshells, because you might be kind of navigating a place, maybe at work or in your relationships, where it will be really beneficial for you to be careful. Again, when we receive information, when we haven't really asked and we're not sure how to interpret, the first question that we ask ourselves is, what does this mean to me? And don't necessarily always be influenced by what this means to other people. If you're climbing stairs, if you're seeing deep ocean or blue sky, or somebody dressed in all white or all black, all of these things are very, very subjective and personal to us. And the way we interpret it is asking ourselves, what does that mean to me? And we can always check, because it's very, very, very literal. Sometimes we see the color white, and sometimes it just means pick the white car, because it will be better in one way or another. And sometimes it's more symbolic and not more figuratively speaking, and it's not as literal. But it's always good to consider both options. So when we do that, we can go ahead and ask again. And it's okay to ask again if we're not quite sure. We can even ask for evidence that it's very, very clear to us and won't be any room for doubt. Sometimes what we might get as a guidance might not be what we had hoped for and what we liked. We are the ultimate authority, and it's always our choice about what to do. Although usually our own internal guidance system is excellent. I will give you an example of when I didn't listen. I still haven't written that book that I got 3 yeses on. I mean, actually, I've been thinking about starting it again very, very recently, but that was a long time ago, and I didn't write it then. And you know what? The world hasn't ended because of it. It's not kind of going into fear and saying, oh, if I don't follow it, but it's just getting additional extra information. Would it be beneficial? Is it in my best interest to do that? And we're more than welcome to ask the universe for signs, and very often we do receive those signs, even if we don't ask for them. Why? Because we're always supported, we're always loved, we're always cared for, even though oftentimes it doesn't seem that way to us. And if you still have more questions as to how to interpret the signs or how to set a particular language of communication with your guidance system, feel free to book a session at askmilena.com. Right now, I'm sure that the universe is giving you a sign to subscribe to my channel and to my newsletter and to give me a like. I'm just kidding, but it would be really helpful if you do so. I'll see you next week, guys. Bye-bye.